you've got this fantastic new deal.
Not all con men today rely on an approach at the doorstep. Con men are now increasingly cold calling people on the phone first, rather than turning up unannounced. Oxfordshire Trading Standards have had a steady stream of complaints coming in from consumers who say they've been missold solar panels. It's 6 a.m. and Oxfordshire Trading Standards have got a warrant to raid the business premises of a company they believe may be carrying out cold calling fraud.
Yeah, the money value of some of these rip-offs are in them millions, and we seem to be now getting involved in more and more of these larger scams.
They also have a warrant to enter and search the suspect's home.
Hello there, we have a warrant to search the address.
Trading Standards have arrested their suspect, and while gathering evidence, they come across a gun in the boot of his car. Martin's colleague Jane is raiding the suspect's business premises.
Can't get entry to the premise at the moment, so we're just looking at another way of getting in.
They'll be scouring every inch of the property in search of evidence that this company has been cold calling people on a huge scale and mis-selling them solar panels.
I've noticed already on the tables there's crib sheets of what to say to the customers, so we'll be seizing all that as well.
And they're obviously into more than just solar panels.
Yeah, they obviously do kitchens as well, don't they? You don't know what you find till you turn the stones over.
The suspect is currently on bail while Trading Standards continue with their investigations.
Hello?
Of course, there's nothing illegal about cold calling on the telephone. But what Trading Standards are worried about is how easy it is for doorstep criminals to compile what are known as suckers lists. Lists of names, addresses and telephone numbers of people who are more likely to fall for scams.
The best-selling lists are normally to do with people who are disabled, people who invest in charities and therefore may be willing to pay out more, for example, for other charities or for cold callers coming into the door.
They're vulnerable people who exhibit signs.
From experience, the statistics show that it's the vulnerable people's list that are sold more.
Right, and the internet makes that all infinitely easier.
The internet makes it very easy, and these lists are very cheap to get hold of.
There are companies that produce databases of information for mass marketing purposes. It's perfectly legal, and they're available to anyone willing to pay. But the lists have become the latest weapon in the doorstep conman's arsenal. So I'm going to see how easy it is for me to acquire one.
Let's say I wanted to target older people. I can select people in the age group 70, 74 and 75 and over. Also go according to whether they've donated money to charity, what kind of credit band they're into, what their employment is. I mean, the list is absolutely endless. I can hone this search right down, and by clicking Start Count, immediately it's come up with 5,141 records of people over the age of 70 in the Bromley area who own their own homes for £647. The really shocking thing in all this for me is that each one of those people could potentially be taken for thousands. You know, what all this shows is that in the age of the internet, finding elderly and vulnerable victims doesn't require lots of door knocking and shoe leather anymore. It's all out there for the cost of a few pennies and a click on a computer.
If you come through here, my wife's in the sunroom.
Gordon Davey is one of the people on the list I've bought. I'm meeting him and his wife Marianne to find out how they feel about being potential targets.
How often do you receive unsolicited phone calls from companies?
Some days we get up to 4 or 5 at a time, and when you try and fob them off, they then come back to you again. People asking me to take part in surveys. They're not trying to sell me anything, but what they're trying to do is they're trying to get information about you and then sell you something afterwards.
It was the easiest thing in the world for me to go online.
Yes.
And search this postcode.
Yes.
And I know that you give money to charity. How does that make you feel that a complete stranger like me can just track you down by going online and finding all your details and personal details about you?
It's wrong, it's bad. But, you know, what can you do? But, of course, the other thing is that when I go out at night sometimes or in the evening, my wife won't answer the phone because if we had a spate of calls during the week, You don't answer the phone.
You get fed up with them and just put the phone down.
And you become a prisoner in your own home if you're not careful.
While doorstep crime traditionally starts with a knock at the door, for some people, an approach over the telephone can be every bit as convincing and easy to fall for. At Ipswich Crown Court, trading standards are about to reach the conclusion of one of their biggest ever investigations. Stuart Hughes is leading the case, and today I'm joining him on his way to the court hearing. Would you say this is the biggest case you've dealt with?
Yes, by a long way. It's probably one of the biggest cases by any trading standards authority in the country of its kind.
The suspects are accused of being involved in a £5.7 million scam, which worked by cold calling people in debt and telling them that if they had a loan taken out before 2007, they could have it cancelled for an upfront fee.
They were telling people that if their agreements were signed before April 2007, that they were potentially illegal and therefore unenforceable. Well, that was just not true.
The victims of this scam that I've met want to remain anonymous, but they all felt that this was an offer that seemed too good to refuse.
They could freeze my credit cards, even write them off.
If we say no, we could miss this opportunity of eradicating £30,000 and just think how much better our lives could be.
Over 3,000 victims across the UK fell for the debt elimination scam and handed over between £500 and £2,000 each. Traditional doorstep crime, I can find a victim just by knocking on the door, but how do these guys actually target their victims?
Well, they used call centres that were set up in Spain, and they had approximately 30 call centre workers working at any one time. They already knew the people they were calling had debts because they'd bought data lists on them.
The company behind this scam was based in the Costa del Sol, and the criminal mastermind was local playboy Tony Muldoon. While he was living it up in his luxury villa, he had a team of people working for him, making cold calls and laundering the millions of pounds worth of payments coming in from victims all over the UK.
Did you realise at the time that the call centre they were calling you from wasn't in the UK?
No, because when I dialed numbers they'd given me, they were UK style numbers.
Victims were told after 12 weeks their debt would be cancelled, but most of them never heard from the company again.
And I cried. I just sat and cried. I just got myself into a worse state than I was in to start with before they'd ever rung.
Tony Muldoon has already been convicted for his part in the scam. Today, Stuart is hoping that the rest of the gang will be found guilty for conspiracy to defraud and money laundering. After a 9-week trial, the jury have come to a decision.
Stuart, what was the final verdict in this case?
The final verdict was that we've secured 5 convictions in this case, which we're very pleased with. 3 of the convictions were for conspiracy to defraud UK consumers, and 2 of the convictions were for large amounts of money laundering.
Are you happy with that?
We're very pleased with that. We feel that that verdict brings some justice for the thousands of victims who lost money out to this disgraceful fraud.
As doorstep con men find new ways to distance themselves from their victims, trading standards are now dealing with a new worrying problem of scam mail. Like more traditional doorstep crime, it's the lonely, the elderly and those in debt who are most likely to fall for it.
If you've got a relative or a neighbour and you see regular postal deliveries of junk mail, there's a very good chance that they've been put on a suckers list, which means they're responding. So high volumes of junk mail is a key sign that somebody has become a potential victim.
Here is just some of the mail that my mother's been receiving. Everyone is asking for money.
What happened with my mum was she received a letter which told her she'd won a competition.
You've been especially selected to receive one, and I've been selected to receive it.
My mother just couldn't understand that it wasn't genuine. And it was just a mass-produced letter that that basically couldn't possibly be true. But my mother didn't see it like that. She saw it was a personally written letter to her.
Place your money back, that's that.
Yeah. You know, it was all, her name was on it, her details were on it, and it was very personal.
That's exactly the reaction the scammers are hoping for. They typically state that the target needs to send in a small fee to release their winnings, and once they respond to the first letter, they get bombarded with thousands more, all demanding more cash. Bromley Trading Standards Officer Rob Vale is coming across more and more incidents of this kind.
Often they're told, don't tell your family, don't tell your friends, we don't want everybody knowing about it. Urgent action required. They're encouraged to respond within 7 days in order not to miss out on this opportunity. Convinced, frankly, that if they keep paying them the money, they'll eventually get the big win.
So you've definitely won, have you?
I know I've won it.
How sure are you?
I'm 100% sure with that. 100%.
That on the 16th you'll get your money?
Yes, definitely. 100% I've won that.
You've got lottery officials telling you that you've won. You've got clairvoyants telling you that you've got to pay for the look energy to be lifted. You've got bankers telling you need to pay fees. Solicitors, they want fees as well, and administration charges, and it just all makes sense to the victim. So they're not actually gambling, they're being brainwashed. It creates this delusional world that becomes the victim's reality. As the scams started to get into her mind and the clairvoyants started saying things to her like, your family are against you.
I can't stand it anymore.
No, but I'm the one trying to help. They're the ones.
You're not helping me. I just want to get on with my own private life.
You know, it's just alarming that these criminals can actually reach people like my mother and have an assisted passage into their homes, into their minds and into their bank accounts.
Jessica received 30,000 scam letters over a 5-year period and paid out tens of thousands of pounds before she sadly died in 2008.
It definitely contributed to her death. You know, that I saw it happen, and I'm pretty sure that without the scam mail, my mother would have gone on and certainly have led a lot happier life and a lot more contented life without the hounding of the criminals plaguing her.
With an increasingly older population and ever more devious tactics being used, the Doorstep con man is a bigger threat than ever. Over the last 6 months, I've discovered that the Doorstep con man has many tricks for finding his way into our homes. It's not always a knock on the door. It can be a letter, a phone call, even an email. The next victim could be your relative, your neighbour, even your mum and dad. It's a crime we all have to fight.